So I recently finished a campaign of D&D for the very first time, in which I was the DM, and I just wanted to do some reflections on my time as DM because I managed to take a party of six adventurers all the way from level 1 up to about level 10, which was where we finally finished, and I decided to call time on things. And obviously, it was my first time DMing like a campaign. I'd done a few one shots before, and I had a fairly good idea of how to manage the time. We had like 3.5 hours to 4 hours in a session, and from those one shots, I'd kind of gauged a good kind of judge of how to get a fair amount of stuff into those 3.5 hours, where there's enough. About one third is RP, about one third is exploring, about one third is combat. That tends to be my kind of golden ratio to say like, okay, we've got a good D&D session going on here, where even if you drop out for a couple of weeks and you miss some time, you come back, you can kind of jump back into things quite quickly and feel like you're making some progress. And that was really my objective. But then it was a case of, well, how do I now scale this up to a full campaign? Now I was very lucky that I knew the group that I was going to be playing with very well. We'd already played one campaign with somebody else as the DM, and he had been DMing for a while. He decided to take a little back seat. He was a forever DM, if you want to call it that. And so he said, Rob, would you like to do it? Because he liked the one shots that I've been doing. And I was quite curious to give it a try. I wanted to try it, and straight away I knew, just based on the type of player that I am, the kind of storyteller that I am, that I really wanted my characters' backstories to play a key role in the campaign. We as adventurers work so hard building these backstories, and very often it's like the DM just does their own little adventure, and then occasionally they'll refer to your backstory and be like, "Oh yeah, that guy you killed was actually your dad" or something. I wanted it to be a little bit more interwoven, particularly from the learnings that I'd had from watching the other DM and the campaign that he'd run, where often things didn't seem tied up, they didn't seem connected, and there was just this constant feeling going on of like, why actually are we a group? Why are we traveling together? And of course, you as a player have to kind of justify that. You have to find reasons why in your head you're sticking around with these people, and ultimately it boils down to, well, I guess we're friends now. Um, but it always lands better, I think, if there's an actual personal stake involved. Like, I want to do this thing because it directly ties with who I am and what I've been trying to do. So my starting point for all of this, um, yeah. So I take a step back. I think if I were to do this again, there's a lot of things that I would do very differently, particularly with this group of players. Um, and to explain what I would do differently, I first need to explain what I actually did. So my starting point for all of this was I'd watch a video by a YouTuber who talked about the value of having physical realia in the session, you know, where it's not just like uh, you find a key, but it's like you actually give the players a key. The idea being that if a person has a physical object, they're more likely to kind of play with it at the table. They're more likely to like literally see it. And then if it's a physical object, they're less likely to then forget about it. Just like, oh, it's in my bag of holding somewhere, and you completely forget. No, it's an actual physical object on the table constantly while it's still a mystery. And that encourages you kind of tacitly to pay more attention to it, and to ask questions about it, and to, oh, I cast detect magic on it. I I cast identify on it. To do all of those types of things that if you just told a person, oh, you find some unusual key, they would just ignore completely. So I liked this idea. And I also really dislike the idea of the party just like, oh, you're all in the tavern one day, and suddenly someone runs into the tavern and he goes, there's a troll attacking the village. And suddenly you guys all go and you fight the troll. And suddenly now you are traveling the length and breadth of the world together, thick as thieves. It doesn't, obviously, a lot of campaigns start that way, and a lot of campaigns are very successful starting that way. And no shade on people that do that, but I wanted to have a bit more of a connective tissue going on. And so, with that in mind, I was kind of thinking, well, um, what are some of the situations in which you would be given physical objects that you can then play with? And I very quickly struck on the idea of having a will reading. So someone has died, your character has been called to this will reading, and they receive these items in the will. That seems logical to me. And hey, well, what sort of items could we have? Well, maybe one of the items could be, like I say, a key to a manor house or a castle, some location, which of course the party would then go and check out. And then, I don't know, it could be like a little dungeon when they get there. There could be spooky ghosts or something, and that's a fun old time. They have to clear that out. Okay, that's one thing. What's another thing that they could have? Well, maybe it could be something a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more puzzly. So I actually ordered one of these offline, online, a little cryptex where you put the correct code in and then you can open it up and there's something inside. I was like, great, okay, maybe this could be one of the things that they get, and they have to find the code somehow on their travels. What else could there be? I don't know, maybe some sort of unusual potion. This is actually just glitter in a jar. But I was like, maybe they get some sort of unusual potion and they don't know what it is, don't know what it does. That could be something. And then they have to ask around, try and find out these things. What else could it be? Maybe some sort of magical item. I came up with a compass, and the compass isn't pointing north. Oh, where is it pointing? So you see what I mean? All of these things, they layer in mystery. And then as an added mystery, I was like, well, how about if we have it that none of the characters actually know the guy that died? None of the guys were expecting this. It completely came out of left field. There's you know, you know, they have been called to this will reading. They don't know each other, and also very weirdly, none of this person who has died, none of his friends are there, none of his family are there. He was a very, maybe he could be a very rich nobleman, and yet it's just a bunch of strangers at the table. That for me feels like a very instant hook, because immediately in real life, if that happened to you, you would be asking questions. You'd be like, well, who the hell is this guy then? Like, why has he invited me to this will reading? You'd be asking more questions. You'd be like, well, where are his family? Maybe let's try and investigate that. How did he die? Maybe let's try and investigate that. And of course, there's the deeper mystery of like following these breadcrumb clues, seeing where this leads. It's not pointing north. Trying to find, opening up this thing, seeing what it is. Trying to find the clues that will open up this. Trying to find the clues of what this potion is. All of these things are mysteries, kind of bubbling along from session to session. And the idea being that they have these items. They're not going to be solved in just one session, but at the same time, they're able to make incremental progress along that journey, and they've got these breadcrumbs of where they can go. So straight away out of that will reading, there are like 4 or 5 locations that they could go to next. Um, it's up to the party where they go. They would need to talk about it among themselves. They would need to have a discussion about it, talk to some of the locals, try and find out some things, and that sort of thing. So that was my thought process, and I still think it was a good hook for the adventure. And just spoiler alert, just to kind of jump ahead, It turns out that the nobleman had he was a member of a very secret magical council that the king had pulled together. The king was terrified of dying. He wanted to. He was an old man. He didn't have any heirs, and he was terrified of dying. And so he pulled together this mortal council. He called them, and they were made up of the greatest magic users in the world. He pulled them together because he was very rich, and he charged them with trying to find a way to make him live forever. And they came up with this quite convoluted idea of creating essentially a a pocket universe that they could transfer him into. In this pocket universe, time doesn't flow. If time doesn't flow, you don't age. If you don't age, you don't die. But the pocket universe would be close enough to our own universe that you could still interact with him. And this was a very complicated process, and it involved, a potion which was obtained through very dubious means, and there were all sorts of elements that went into this. But ultimately, that was the long and short of it. And the idea being that the characters would discover this. They would find out that the character who had died, he had accidentally trapped his family in one of these portals, and he'd been trying to get them back out again. And in fact, that was why the party was pulled together, was to rescue his family. But then also there'd be a deeper thing that they would discover eventually, which was that one of the members of the council who had left very early on because of creative differences, this person had actually taken the knowledge that they'd learned from the council, and they were using it for very dubious means rather than just trying to keep the king alive forever. Instead, what they were doing was kidnapping people and transferring their souls into these soul stones. And then they were using those soul stones to power these basically warforged clockwork soldiers. And those clockwork soldiers were now patrolling the streets. And so, as far as the city was concerned, this was a really great person because they had created these robots that were able to work for free, and they didn't tire, and they were very good soldiers. And so this person was climbing the ranks within the city, but really what they were doing was kidnapping people, transferring them into these soul stones. And so the idea would be that the party would then discover that mystery, that they would then go to the castle. That would be another dungeon, going through the castle, fighting these clockwork soldiers. They'd eventually confront the crown artificer, and lo and behold, plot twist, dun dun dun, the king, the man that had been trying to live forever, that was terrified of dying, he had actually also been transferred into a clockwork soldier. And then that would be a boss fight slash moment of decision for the party, because then they would have to decide: do we kill the king? Do we try to bring him back to his senses? Try to rescue him somehow? He doesn't have a body anymore. What do we do about this? And bubbling along away in the background the whole time, there was a lot of political tension in the city. Basically, because the king had gone AWOL for a while, there's a bit of a power vacuum. There were basically the commoners were trying to rise up, and there was a lot of anarchy. And so this is why there was the need for all of these soldiers, these clockwork soldiers, to kind of keep a lid on this quite aggressive behavior from locals. So all of this stuff was happening. The problem was, and this is the problem that I came across very quickly. I think in my head, that is a great setup for a story. I still believe so. I think I did a great job creating something homebrew there. I think it was something that I would definitely take and use again and repurpose it, because it's good. And if I were writing a novel, if I were writing a story, fantastic. Go through that mystery. It's wonderful. I might even do that, exactly that. Problem is, we're playing D&D. And in D&D, this is the thing I learned very quickly. Everybody is playing their own story in their heads. And everybody is the main character in their own story. And so while you, as the DM, might have this fantastic mystery that you've set up, this fantastic story, and even though you've told them in session 0, this is a mystery that we're playing, guys. Maybe it's the personality of my party that I was working with, but I found that they were, uh, unless I spoon fed information to them and crammed it down their throats and said, look, here is some information, fucking take it. By which I mean monologuing villains and actual, like, putting something in a sign that they can read. They would very much kind of just glance off the mystery. Again, it might be a personality thing, but I've got quite a Gordian knot here of a mystery going on. And I guess in my head, I was kind of treating this like, well, in reality, like I said, if I'd received this will, I would be asking questions. I'd be like, well, who's this guy? Why has he invited me in? And I personally would then talk to people. I go, right, let's track down this guy's family. Let's talk to him. Like how did he die? What's this? Why is he pulling me into this will reading? What's going on? What's the mystery? And I'd be constantly like looking at all of these things and thinking, well, what's the deal with this thing? Why did you give me this? Like, why these items in particular? Like, why, he's a rich nobleman. He could have given me anything. Why did you give me this stuff? I would constantly, and this is how I'd be playing D&D too. I'd be constantly asking questions, constantly bringing, talking to NPCs, constantly like casting detect magic or locate object or anything like this, trying to figure out what the mystery is. But like I say, my party didn't do any of that, and they would just kind of skim off the surface of this mystery as if it wasn't even there. Um, like I say, unless you spoon feed it to them directly, then more likely than not they'd be like, well, okay, there's a mystery there, but let's just go and fight some goblins. You know, Session 2, I've just given them all this stuff, like I say, and then I'm like, okay, here's the sandbox of the city, go and play. And they just spend the entire session shopping, because of course I'd built a bunch of shops because it's a city. I was trying to be quite realistic, and I built a lot of stuff. They don't have any money. You're level 1. What are you doing going to the shops already? What's the point? Like, what are you hoping to buy there? You've got your starting equipment at like 5 gold. Like, oh, I want to sell my I've got a spare leather armor. What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, go find this guy's family. Like, go to the coroner, go to the hospital, trying to find out how he died. Like, what? Pick up his remains. You got a letter. I gave him a letter. I said, please deliver this letter to an NPC. Like, how can you be any more of it? No, we're not going to do that. Let's go shopping. Oh, and if you're on the way, let's deliver that letter. That's the freaking hook for the story. It's, I don't know. It was quite frustrating, and I was getting very frustrated with them. At certain points, there was definitely clashes because I didn't feel they were taking this mystery seriously. I didn't feel that they were taking, because it was a complicated mystery. It took me a long time to come up with all of this stuff. I put it up just right, and I knew that it was a really, really good. There were a lot of really good hooks here, and a lot of really good payoffs. If they just followed the freaking story threads, I didn't care which one. Like I say, there's like 4 or 5 different ways that they can go, and instead they're like, oh, let's I don't know, let's just faff about a bit, in town. Let's let's go and let's play tricks on the shopkeeper, and I don't know, I'm going to deliver a bunch of flowers to the potion person. But as they're delivering the bunch of flowers, I'm going to like cast minor illusion, and then it's gonna release a stink cloud, and then as they get the flowers, it's going to be really stinky, and that actually happened. And I'm just like sitting there, just twiddling my thumbs, like, okay, fine, yeah, that happens. And I'm describing it because I'm trying to be a good DM, and all the time I'm just like, guys, like, you've physically got a freaking thing here. It's not pointing north. Does that not intrigue you a bit? Where is it pointing? Follow the thing, right? I don't know. It's obviously just different ways of playing. D&D. I think they were having fun because I mean, they were coming along to all the sessions. They were enjoying themselves, and I would say, um, we had some great moments along the way. But those first few levels, when they didn't go the way that I'd kind of been expecting them to in my head, and it was frustrating. But eventually, by me like force feeding them down the road and pushing them there, eventually we got all the way through the mystery, and it was solved. And at this point, um, I gave them a few weeks of downtime in game, and at this point, I was kind of like doing a mini reset in my head. I was like, okay, that whole solving mystery thing, that doesn't work with this party. It doesn't work with their personalities. Like I say, everyone is like a hero in their own heads, and so they don't want to necessarily play the story that you've set up for them. They kind of want to do their own story that they're on. And I would say I feel I did a really good job bridging from their backstories to the campaign. Like for each of them in session zero, I did like a set like a one-on-one mini session with each of them, like 10-15 minutes with each party member, basically taking them from the end of the backstory that they'd written, connecting them then to the beginning of their campaign, saying basically, how did you receive the summons to this will reading? So, as an example, one of the characters, he was adopted. He was a turtle, and he'd been adopted onto this boat by this dwarven lady. And the will summons actually came to this dwarven lady. It turned out that she had been a childhood friend of the man that died. They'd grown up together, and she'd gone off to sea while he'd, you know, become a nobleman, and she hadn't been in touch with him for years, and she thought that he'd completely forgotten about her, and now suddenly he's dead, and he's bringing her to the will reading, and it's very emotional for her. She doesn't feel she can do it. She feels she's conflicted inside. She feels she's let her friend down, and so she says, "Look, that man was like a brother to me growing up, and now you, player, you are like a son to me. So you should go to this will reading in my stead. I'll write out a legal letter to make it all official that you are as much a son to me as that man is a brother to me. And so anything that he is giving to me, I'm giving to you. And you should go to that will reading instead." And that was the connective way. The ship comes into port, he gets off, and lo and behold, we're into session one. Perfect. And I did something similar for each of the characters. So I felt that went really well. But then, like I say, once they're in the campaign, it turns out that it's like herding cats is the thing. Everyone is off doing their own thing. Everyone wants to do their own thing. And this happened quite often, quite early as well. They would clash because different people were pulling in different directions. You'd have a character who wanted to help restore order to the city, and then you'd have another character who was just like, I don't know, basically a murder hobo, but not a murder hobo, but was a chaos goblin and just wanted to, like, you know, cause nonsense to happen. And then you have another character who was just, I don't know, just there for the ride, and it was, everyone was kind of pulling in different directions, like I say, and that would actually cause inter-party conflict at quite a few points where you'd have it would almost break out into PvP. You'd have characters stealing from each other, or no, the party would never talk. This was an issue. Like, they would never just sit down and be like, right, guys, what are we doing? Here are the things that we know. What are we doing next? It would just be like, yeah, I guess we're going over that way, or they would individually. The party was constantly splitting up. Like, I'm going to go over here. Yeah, well, I'm going over here. Guys, stop splitting the party. Anyway, right, whatever. So, like I say, the first in my head, the first like session levels 1 to 5 were going to be um, basically in the city solving this mystery. Level 6 to 10 was then going to be the local island, traveling around like the the other towns and cities in the nearby area, seeing some of the other races that are nearby, because the whole thing is set on an island. Then levels 11 to 15 would be traveling around the whole world and traveling to different nations. And then levels 16 to 20 would then be traveling onto other planes of existence. That was my idea. So city, island, world, universe kind of scales upwards as the player power level scales. So levels 1 to 5, they solved the mystery. Huzzah. 3 weeks of downtime. Like I say, I did a bit of a soft reset. I was like, okay, obviously a mystery doesn't work with these guys. What would work? And this was where I decided that instead of doing a mystery for the whole party, I would instead have a bit more of a direct, obvious big bad that they're trying to stop. There's a threat that happens, a call to action. One of the characters ends up so at the beginning of this kind of arc, one of the characters is crowned the king of this island. A threat appears, and they need to try and stop that threat from happening. And to do that, there's various things that they need to do along the way to figure out how to find the threat, how to stop the threat. It's a bit more direct. Call to action, and off they go. And along the way, I was basically like, right, this is where we're going to bring in your backstories a bit more. And we're going to say, look, we're going to have a section here which is for one of you. We're going to go there, we're going to explore it, we're going to meet the characters from your backstory, we're going to see what they're up to. They've been kidnapped. Oh no, rescue them. Great, wonderful, that's that bit. Then we go to the next section. Now we're into your backstory. Now we're into your backstory. So it was like traveling, following breadcrumbs, each section, a different person's backstory. So then it's a bit more personal to them. They're a bit more directed to do it. And what I realized was, and this is my main takeaway, the idea of proactive versus reactive storytelling. So this group worked best with reactive storytelling. What do I mean by that? I mean that you, as the DM, have plotted out A to B to C to D to E, that they follow that route. And you say, here is A, this is what it's like. And then they react to that. And then based on how they react to that, you then go, all right, we're now to B. This is what this is like. And then they react to B. And then you're like, based on that reaction, you're then like, okay, we're now on to C. That's what this is like. And so as an example, this would be an extreme example, didn't actually happen. Let's say you go to rescue a princess from a dragon. You go there, you kill the princess. Right, next stop, we now go back to the castle. How does the king react to the fact that the princess is dead? I don't know. He banishes the party. Okay, next point. Now how does and you follow it that way. And that's reactive storytelling because you are reacting to what the party does, the party is reacting to what you do, and it's a very linear A, B, C, D, E, but obviously what B, C, D, and E are change as you go. That, for me, is the best way to tell stories with this particular group of people, and that is the way that I would do it going forwards. Whereas I personally, and I'm realizing this, my personal way of playing would be a proactive form of storytelling where you sit down and discuss and be like, right, what are we doing? Where are we going? How's this going to work? And you shape the story before it happens as opposed to reacting to it afterwards. Does that make sense? That's the kind of way around it works. So anyway, that second part of things went much more smoothly once I stopped kind of fighting against what the party was and be like, look, this is a mystery. Try and solve this mystery. God damn it. Just put your heads together and talk and actually think and try and solve this mystery. And once I stopped like stressing about that, because I really was stressing, and I was just much more like, all right, you're at a circus now. Oh, look, they're having fun at the circus. All right, let's move on. Okay, now we're at a university town. Okay, all right, now we're in an underwater city. And you just going point A to point B to point C, and you just let them have fun. Um, it's not as satisfying for me as a DM, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of brought it to a close after a session. Once they defeated that main threat at level 10, I was like, you know what, let's wind this down. I gave them it was a good off ramp. It was a good point for them to finish. They defeated this big bad. I gave them a nice closure, brought everything back to where they'd started, and weaved in a lot of the NPCs and the character growths that they'd had along the way. And I feel it was a good send off. I think everyone was happy with how it ended. Um, but the other main reason we ended was also because this inter-party conflict I talked about earlier, it just grew quite ugly at one point. There was one person in the party who was very definitely, I don't know, he just started disliking another member of the party. It started with him disliking the way that he played. To be fair, I was on his side. I disliked the way that this person plays as well, but I made my peace with it. Um, and it just kind of grew a bit more ugly as things went on, and um, he started like trying to bring other people on side and be like, these people all agree with me as well. And it's like, well, they don't really agree with you. They're just nodding along as you're talking. So anyway, yeah, he decided to drop out. Well, first he said, how long until the end of the campaign? And I told him it's 4 sessions. It was 4 sessions. I little bragging right here, I am a well organized DM. Let me just point that out right now. I am freaking on the dot. I'm punctual, and I follow my plans, and I plan things out to the nth degree, like every single time, I would have a folder like this. Every time I would like write out notes. So, this is my session 35 notes. Flashback to the previous session. This is the important bullet points. That's during the recap at the beginning. This is the starting point, so there's a bit of flavor text there that I describe, and then this is where they're exploring. This is the dungeon and all the things. Here's a combat. I've printed out the stat blocks, so I don't need to be looking them up elsewhere. I've got them here. Carrying on. I've then got room D, room G, room E. So they're exploring a dungeon here, and then finally, when they're actually like fighting the big bad. Here is a little bit of monologue and what he does, and then here's the aftermath. Here is the how things end, like how I basically scripted out a little bit of an epilogue for each character. There's like 15 pages of notes here. I would do that every single week. Every single week. I was really organized. What else have I got in here? I've got here shops. So anytime that they go to a shop and they say what's for sale, I've got it. In prices, mid range. The Arcane Well, that was a potion shop they went to quite a lot. All sorts of things going on here. What else? We've got a map of the world, of course, very useful for reference. Got a calendar. I actually kept a freaking calendar, and I was following it and saying like which day of the week it was and what happened on each of these days. They went all the way through to about here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 months of in-game time that we went through the entire thing. And you can see like what the weather was like on each of these days. I've got like when was it full moon, when was it new moon, it is planned out, right? Got a whole bunch of other stuff. One of the characters had a tarot deck that he would draw from, so I've got what the tarot cards mean, because I don't know anything about tarot, because why would I? So anyway, yeah, that's that. And I would have that every single time. Very organized DM. So yeah, my character. The long and the short of it is, he came to me and he said, "How long until the end of things?" And I said 4 sessions. He went through, I think, 1 or 2, and then he dropped out. And it's a shame because we were actually playing in his house. So we had to very quickly find another place to play. Luckily, we found a pub that was willing to host us, and we had the final couple of sessions. So yeah, all in all, it was a successful campaign. First and foremost, it was a successful campaign. We went all the way through. There was a beginning, there was an end. It was a satisfactory shape of things. There was a mystery that they solved. There was a big bad that they defeated. You know, they solved the mystery, but oh no, it turns out that this guy was only just a pawn that was playing for this other guy. And then they go and fight the other guy. And then had they continued, it would have turned out that that other guy was just a pawn for some other person. And it just ramps up constantly, you know? So yeah, all in all, we got through the campaign. It went well in that regard. I think there are a lot of campaigns out there that people have that don't finish, that just kind of peter out. So I'm happy that we got all the way through. Most of us, the same people. Quite a deadly campaign as well, actually. We lost along the way to three. We lost three people died. And two other times someone died but was resurrected. I would say, though, that of that, it's with a caveat. One of those times was a completely plot-driven death. It was in the final fight, and I just wanted to show like the stakes were quite high, and so the main character, the big bad that they were fighting, they burst into his domain, and he just like jumps up from his chair, points at one of them, and goes, "Power word kill." And of course the person dies immediately. And then roll initiative, they're into combat, and of course they're trying to then resurrect this guy. The healers go to him and cast Revivify, and the big bad counterspell, right? I just wanted to raise the stakes. I wanted to show that this guy was not messing about, that he was there that he meant business. But it went well because for 2 rounds, this person was dead, but we were able to I was able to like role play what it was like when he was dead, and then he came back, and it was quite heroic because he was finally revivified. He used counterspell, but then of course he'd burned his reaction. Another character came along with Revivify. Everyone knows Revivify. What the hell? Then properly brings him back. Finally, it's his turn. This was the wizard of the party. He casts Summon Draconic Spirit, and that's very thematic because this big bad, his whole thing was he was trying to summon a dragon so he could take over the world. And so the wizard comes back from the dead, summon Draconic Spirit, and boom, kills the big bad. So that was a very satisfying ending. I was very happy with that. Lots of happiness around. I think overall everyone was pleased. Like I say, once I stopped fighting against the party, once I stopped trying to make the campaign something that it wasn't, and I realized what worked with this group of players and what didn't, we had a lot more fun. And I'm glad that I did it. Were I to do it again, like I say, I'd do things a bit differently. I think I would have. The mystery would work with a different group of players. It didn't really work with this group, so I'd probably be a little bit more on the nose in terms of where they're going and what they're meant to be doing. So, lessons learned for next time with this group. Also, I should say, I realize I'm very good as a DM at structuring a session. I'm very good as a DM at role play. That's my forte. I like role playing characters, getting into different accents and ways of talking, and I think they responded well to that because there were quite a few NPCs that I built that they built relationships with. One of them ended up marrying one of my NPCs. Didn't see that coming. One of them, just really hated another one of them and was constantly trying to like defeat them. So there's, I think that those are strengths of mine. Weaknesses of mine, definitely combat. I'm not great at juggling lots of different things in the heat of battle. I'm likely to kind of forget things even if they're on a stat block. My villains I try and make them fight realistically. So like if the fight's going badly, they'll try and run away or they'll call for reinforcements. I always try and throw a bit of a curveball into the fight, so it's not just like you're in a room with five guys, let's fight. It's always like, okay, but one of these guys is trying to like steal some gold, and another one of these guys is like has an NPC like a knife point. He's like, don't come any closer, and I'm trying to throw a little bit of variation in there. But the problem is that fights end up happening in just like 2 or 3 rounds, everyone's dead. So if you're spending one of those rounds with the villain going, "Ooh, what's going on? You've action economy is a problem at the best of times for a DM." Um, but again, that was something I think I got better at over the course of things. And the way that I got better at it was by basically not stressing about it too much. Like to begin with, I was actually like building all of these combats in D&D Beyond, looking at the CR rating. CR rating is nonsense. Nonsense. It means nothing. Um, Instead, I would describe what they're fighting, and basically, I would fudge it a little bit. I'd just be like, for some of the fights anyway, for some of the fights, I don't know, it would say on the stat block that this person has like 100 hit points. But then your fighter comes along and they do 2 attacks, the action surge, they do 2 more attacks, and they're using like special abilities the whole time. You end up doing like 56 damage in one hit. All right. And then it's the next person, and then this one's a rogue, and they steady aim and they shoot. Of course, they hit, and then they've got sneak attack damage, and then they end up doing like 60 points of damage, and there you go. Like 2 people have attacked, and according to the stat block, that character is now dead. But I don't want them to be, and so I'm just like, oh, they're looking pretty bad. I mean, they're dead, but the party doesn't need to know that. And so then it's the wizard's turn, and then so I they still kill these characters quickly before they've had a chance to have a turn. They still kill the character. They still kill these enemies, but it just takes a little bit longer than you would think. Um, what's the game? It's Earthbound. In Earthbound, you I don't know if you've played it, but you have like there's a rolling HP. So if you take like 100 damage, it doesn't like immediately take it. It's like your HP goes like 99, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94, 93, 92, 92, 1, quite quickly, but it's like rolling down. And so you then have a buffer time where you can potentially get a healing spell in and rescue yourself from taking all of that damage. Um, it's kind of like that in D&D. I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. I'm writing down how much damage this this character is taking. I'm not being ridiculous about it. Like I'm not gonna like suddenly have a character who's like a villain who's supposed to have, I don't know, 50 hit points and they end up taking like 500 to die. I'm not being stupid about it, but I definitely was occasionally allowing them to take a few more hits than was strictly written on the stat block. Um, but what's the alternative? Is putting another body on the field, and then that's another stat block that I've got to deal with, and I'm like, oh, these 20 guards all attack you. Hang on a second, I'm going to roll 20 dice now. Yeah, so fudging it worked well. Um, and designing dungeons as well. I need to get better at that, particularly puzzles. Some puzzles I was pretty good at. Things like this, those worked well. I've got one guy in the party that really likes puzzles, so I try to give them a few puzzles like that, just to kind of, you have to build this block, and then the block, once you've built it, is magical. And he's like, great, I get to build a block. Oh, cool. It's like, Krypton Factor. Um, that worked well. But I think there were other puzzles that I designed that were just like, yeah, that's you know, you sometimes you swing and miss. So overall, very happy. Um, I would definitely do a campaign again. Like I say, I've taken some learnings from this. Um, I might try doing a written module next time rather than doing everything homebrew. Um, but maybe not. I mean, I've got a good hook now. I've got a good starting point. If I had a completely different group of players, I could try running this exact campaign again, just slightly differently. Obviously, tailored for that group rather than this one. Um, and I've got a few other ideas of things that I could try that would go a bit better. So overall, I would say it was a strong B plus of a campaign. Definitely the best campaign that I've been involved in terms of it running smoothest. But then I've only been in 3 campaigns so far. One of which fizzled out when we got to about level 3, and it fizzled out because one of our players was in hospital, so we couldn't really keep playing. And then the next campaign was not great. So I'd say this is a B plus, B plus. Fun for all. Definitely some room for growth and improvement. But for a first time in the DM chair, I am happy with what I accomplished, and I think I did a good job. Let's see what happens next. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Bye.